Welcome to the Genesis of the Doctor podcast, where we're taking a journey to the time and space of the history of Doctor Who. I'm Tris,
And I'm Joy.
and for today's episode, we're focusing on the ninth and 10th serials of Season 3, The Savages and the War Machines. And I've got a lot of thoughts on both of these, I think.
Yeah. I definitely liked them better than basically the rest of season 3.
Interesting. Okay. I think
I felt like they were stronger, just like stronger ideas for episodes than what we've had before this, largely.
I do agree in the case of the War Machines. I did not like the Savages at all, though. Actually,
Yeah.
I actually thought the Savages felt like one of the worst stories I've seen. So I guess let's start with that, because there was a lot to unpack with the Savages. I don't like that there was never a name given for those people. They
Yeah,
just
that's
stayed
definitely weird.
Savages all the way through.
Don't even know what the planet's called. And then
No.
Steven stays there.
Yeah, we don't know what the planet's called. We're pretty sure they're humans, but the Doctor says, they're in this far off future land of true peace, basically, and this true peace actually comes from what's the best way to phrase this? It comes from stealing the life force of the suppressed, basically.
Yeah.
Which, once the Doctor finally learns that, does not approve of that. But I feel like this was such a... Like, the baseline idea of, hey, having a master race and oppressing other people's bad. Like, yes, on paper, that's a good idea. But I
Yeah.
feel like the execution here was really questionable. Like, oh, well, the Doctor doesn't agree with us, then we're going to steal his life force. And in the process, I guess, implants the Doctor as a conscience in somebody. So the man gets to look at everything that's gone on. And Jano gets to look at everything that goes on. He goes, oh my god, we've been evil. Like,
Yeah.
there's no consequence there.
Yeah, it's definitely a little weird to do it that way, especially because like I guess he just doesn't have a conscience whatsoever beforehand, and then he just suddenly has exactly the Doctor's
Yeah,
morals,
I
which is
don't-
definitely a bit funny.
I don't like the implications behind that, because the implication is almost like, oh, these people just don't know better. When it's like,
Yeah.
it should be more about learning. It should be more about learning that their way was wrong and how to do better and coming to terms with that. Instead of, now that I have a conscience, I can see this was evil. I want this to end. Like,
Yeah.
that's all it was, and that's very shoddy, in my opinion. There's no depth to that.
That part definitely feels like it's like we're writing this for children so they can understand very simple concepts. And not we want it to be high concept or anything.
Yeah, which I definitely think was to its detriment. I have a couple other like noteworthy things in here. Of, for some reason, like the first episode, Steven's just not believing anything Dodo says, and it feels really out of character for him. And with everything they've been through together so far, that he's just not believing anything that she's saying or doing. It's very strange.
Yeah, that part definitely felt weird. It felt like they were going back to like how they acted with Susan all the time, where
Yeah.
it's just like, she sees something happening and then it's just like, no, you didn't see anything. None of us believe you for some reason.
Comforting a child, I guess. Oh, it's actually all okay. Except for everything Steven and Dodo have been through, they should trust each other a bit more, I guess.
Yeah. And then the Doctor's just weirdly dismissive when she goes missing, which doesn't make much sense to me either.
No, it really doesn't. Although I guess that sets up for the War Machines a bit, but we'll come to that later. But
Yeah.
I guess my overall thoughts on the Savages is that there's an idea there, but boy, did I not like how they executed that idea throughout the entire like 4 episodes of it. Like, what it ended up being it could have been done in just 2 episodes. It wouldn't have been as impactful,
Yeah.
but I gotta be real, I think the only thing that gave this story substance is the fact that Steven leaves at the end of it, which also feels completely out of nowhere. And the fact that he says, "Oh, I can't just walk out on you and Dodo," like, you were gonna leave him like 4 stories ago anyway.
Yeah. That scene definitely felt weird because it felt like it was something they could have tried to build up more over the course of the story, and then they just kind of have it be like a very quick scene instead.
Yeah, you could have built up the fact that he was sort of leading both sides a little bit, almost like giving showing leadership qualities to both sides, and that way, them being like, "Yes, you lead us," would make sense. Whereas it's like, we want the doctor to lead us. Oh no, my dear boy, I can't stay, but this dear boy can stay. He'll stay. He'll do it in my stead. I'm sorry, what? Like,
yeah.
That was bad. This is honestly how I feel about it.
Yeah.
But let's get your overall thoughts, including if you have any like specific moments that you want to call attention to.
I felt like it. Like I kind of liked it, mostly because of like the idea behind it. Although I will say that the original idea was actually a lot worse because it was going to be called the White Savages.
Oh,
and then in the final product, Jano is wearing blackface.
Yeah,
but they wanted everyone in the city to wear it, so it would have been a lot worse.
Yeah,
had they actually gone through with that.
Yeah, that definitely would have been a lot worse.
Yeah, luckily that ended up not happening. But then, like, I kind of liked... I like the idea that it's, like, showing that, like, Jano even says, don't you realize that all progress is based on exploitation? And, like, I like that it's, like, a breakdown of, like, stuff like that.
Yeah. I appreciate that they even, like, said that, like, oh, like, all progress is based on exploitation, and the doctor just, like, isn't having it. I do think that's, like I said, like, there's really good ideas implanted in here, but I don't think a single bit of the execution was good, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. I did also like very specifically the scene where they're going back to the TARDIS and they run into Wilda, I think his name is.
Yeah.
Because it just highlights how different the Doctor is from an earthly child. Because he's literally been in that same exact situation before, and he just decided to try to murder the person. Whereas here he's deciding, like, no, we have to stop and we have to help him. And then he even gets arrested because he wanted to help him so much.
Yep.
So it's like, it's a very good highlight there.
It is. That's definitely probably one of the best parts, seeing how he handles this situation in a very different way than he did before, and how changed as a person he is.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder how much of it is because of, making a good impression on these other companions, since he's on better terms with them than he was with the other ones at first.
Yeah. Also, like, I had to note that, like, these people really remind me of Tecteon. Because it's just, like, the exact same idea there, basically.
That's very true, yeah. And it's I mean, the exact way they're taking the life force isn't really made clear, because clearly it's not killing them. It's just, like, sapping all their energy for the day kind of thing. But it's still just the fact that it's constant experimentation on other people to... better their own race kind of thing. That is basically what Tecteun was doing.
Yeah.
In the name of progress, the name of science, the foundation of the Time Lords.
And it's also just funny to note that, like, the elder people were watching the Doctor's adventures the whole time, and they never learned anything from him. Which is just funny, especially from a modern perspective, because I feel like people do that all the time these days, too.
Yeah. I did find it a little weird how they're like, oh, the traveler from beyond time and, like, our star charts. Like, we've been watching your whole journey the entire time, and it's just like, that's interesting. But you didn't know that he had companions?
Yeah.
Are you just hearing about the impact of the man called the Doctor throughout time and space then?
Yeah, I guess it's like they literally just, like, noticed, like, a ship is here on this planet, and then they just watched that ship go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So they didn't, like, actually see anything happening.
I guess. And then the legends of the man called the Doctor, or, something along those lines.
Yeah.
It does make me wonder how they track something like that. Like, the Daleks have done it and they kind of had like they explained a sort of science to it to a degree. Science fiction, you kind of just figured, all right. But something about how this advanced civilization tracked the Doctor's entire journey up to that point, but didn't know he was going to arrive, but they know his legacy, does feel a little strange at how little they explained of it.
Yeah. I did also find it funny how, like, they say that the elders took, like, the ability to make art from the native people, and then it's like, you look at their city, there is no artwork there. It's like so boring.
Yeah, it very much so. Like I honestly, the first bit, I thought they were like colonists. Like I thought they came from like another planet and colonized this planet, and that's why they were in the city the whole time. The city was like originally their ship or something. Because just the way it all looked, it looked more like they arrived there and conquered the natives.
Yeah, and then we don't exactly know, like, if that's the case, or like what happened there. They really don't go into it.
They don't. And then I don't know. I think it's important though to talk about like Steven's character here, because he really does spend a good amount of this story strangely out of character when it comes to Dodo, kind of leading a little bit when it comes to the Doctor, but these are all traits that we saw better in other ones, like at the Massacre, for example.
Yeah.
That they weren't really highlighted well here. I kind of feel like it's more so just that he's taking initiative is the one highlight.
Yeah. I did like when he had to defeat like the guard, and he decided instead of trying to use force, he's strategically like shot the light beam back at him with the mirror and all that stuff.
I did like that with the mirror. I thought that was kind of smart, and that was pretty interesting. Especially since, you know, it's a light beam. But
yeah.
I did also think
much else noted here.
The whole little story arc of Nanina defending Exorce was a bit strange. Like, yes, it's to prevent them from getting worse or being as bad as them or something along those lines. But the entire way that situation was handled seemed very strange. It seems like it felt like they were setting up some sort of romance arc for them, which didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And the fact that, this guard is a changed man because he saw they have a society too, also feels very strange. Because surely they would have known that if they knew where the caves were to kidnap them from in the first place.
Yeah.
So it just didn't really feel thought out, and those two in particular being given the amount of focus they were, it almost felt like they were setting up for something bigger with them that they then didn't do.
Yeah.
But the whole ending sequence, Jano's plan was like his plan to undo everything was, I'm going to bring everybody into the city. Look at them. They're all my prisoners. Psych, they're not actually my prisoners. Get them, guys. And they just destroy everything. And the only people to try and stop him, not the elders, not everyone that loves life in that city, it's the bloodthirsty guards that just wanted to kill everyone the entire time anyway. And, like, the three of them. And that's it. And then they stop him. And then it's like, hooray! Yay! Everything's safe now. We can live in peace and harmony. And it's... Surely, it's not that simple. Like, I know Jano had, like, a lot of authority. But, like, if they were already calling that authority into question, like, the scene before this one, and how they were making arrangements for someone else to take charge over him, surely someone else would have been like, hey, you're literally uprooting our entire society here. I don't believe in this. And oppose it in some way.
Definitely felt weird. Because, like, they were already turned against Jano before he arrived, and then just like, oh, well, I guess we'll hear you out anyways.
And then they didn't do anything. Like, they basically sat there and watched it happen and didn't have another line throughout the entire rest of the episode.
Yeah. I feel like it probably would have been a bit better if you had like a scene where Steven addresses everyone.
Yes.
As their new leader, and like just had that scene there, but they just ran off.
I am curious. Was Jano like? 'Cause I must have like missed this in my notes, or it wasn't clear to me. Was Jano the full leader of the society, or was he just like someone in authority? Because I didn't get the impression he was the leader of the society until the very last scene. I felt like he was just like a spokesperson or someone in authority, but not the higher up, because they were the elders.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be one of the elders. I'm not too sure though.
Like
exactly how that all broke down.
That's why that wasn't clear to me, because I didn't feel like he was in a position to make those leadership decisions on his own, especially at the end.
Yeah.
Like, Chow, I understand wanting Steven to lead them, because Steven did the most with him, and Chow was basically the leader of those people. But everything with Jano that just didn't make sense to me. Like, is the Doctor's conscience just in him forever now?
I think in a comic or a Big Finish thing, they continued the idea and they just like extract like his consciousness and then like put him in like a jar or something.
What? Okay. Okay, I see. This is just continuously very strange.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird like side content with all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like Steven goes on to have kids here, and then his kids overthrow him, and then he's just like retired in a cabin.
Okay.
Basically, is how it happens later in his life.
Why did his kids overthrow him?
I think it was just like they just wanted to be
like,
in charge.
Is he a bad leader or are they bad?
I'm not too sure. I do know Peter Purvis has constantly talked about wanting. He wants Doctor Who to go back to this and then to show that Steven was a terrible leader, and then the Doctor has to help overthrow him. So that's what Steven wants, or that's what Peter Purvis wants.
So he wants to play an unintentional villain, basically.
Yeah.
Honestly, I kind of love that idea, if not only because I don't see the leadership qualities that the Doctor saw in him. I don't think he's someone that would lead well. I think he's someone that does well in a panic and can help bring people together, but bringing people together does not necessarily mean leader.
Yeah. Like, he has a good heart to him, and like he cares deeply about people, so for them, from that perspective, it's makes sense for him to be like the one to help them transition into not exploiting people.
But he also doesn't know anywhere near enough about either of these societies to be the person doing it.
Yeah.
The other thing I have noted here is Dodo's character. But at this point, she's so upset, saying bye to Steven and crying, but like, they really didn't know each other. They really like never fleshed out her character where she and Steven would have been close enough for this, because they also only had like 4 adventures. Yeah, they were actually kind of large scale adventures in terms of what they did and everything. But the way Steven leaving impacted Dodo, at least at the end there, didn't really feel right. And it made me take a step back and look at her, and I'm like, Dodo's character is very nothing. It's very generic. Like, there's like the semblance of personality she had in the first couple episodes, they got rid of. They got rid of that personality, and the only thing about her there is now is that she's someone that would snoop around, which is any companion trait. So they had Steven get the defining traits by the end, most of which he already had, they kind of just continued with. And Dodo is just a woman in the TARDIS, basically. And it's so upsetting. That's so upsetting. Like, Steven's leaving and she's upset about it, and I can't think of a specific character trait that leaves her with in the TARDIS.
Yeah. I think her being upset by him leaving makes sense just because she spent more time with Steven than the Doctor.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't know the Doctor.
Yeah.
She very briefly talks to the Doctor, so it's like, from that perspective, it made sense to me, because Steven's like the only one she actually knew.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for her to be upset for that reason, but it's more so just a case of they still weren't together that long, that I feel like the level of upset over it she is, I feel like doesn't quite make sense.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
I did find it very funny though when when they're destroying the machine, and the doctor's like, "Isn't it so great to destroy something that's evil?" And then Do's just and smashes it again.
I love how it's one of the few actual like footage that we had too. Like it wasn't stills with text overlaid or just hearing the audio. Like we could actually see her be like, "Yeah," and then she starts swinging at it.
That was so funny.
That was funny. But yeah, come the end, like I gotta be real. I think the Savages might be my least favorite story that we've seen of the classics thus far. Everything just felt like it just did not go well to me, and the way they threw in Steven leaving at the end very much felt like well, sorry, your contract's up and we're not renewing it.
Yeah, I liked it. I definitely liked the War Machines more.
Yes.
But I kind of enjoyed the Savages.
Okay.
It's also fun notes here is that this is actually the first story so far where nobody has died in it. Because normally we have side characters die.
That's true.
This one they just didn't have a side character die.
Yeah, technically they don't die. They lose life force, but they don't actually die. Yeah.
And then this was also the first story to be filmed in a quarry, which we'll be seeing a lot of over Classic Who. That's becomes a defining trait of classic Doctor Who.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Russell T. Davies actually wanted to bring Steven back in the Giggle, but it was like a first draft idea, and he wanted him to play a cow called the Ruminat for some reason.
What?
So the idea was, for some reason, he was transformed into a cow, and then at the end of the episode, it'd be like, oh, it's actually Steven. You can tell it never got past the first draft idea, though.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. It would be cool to bring him back just because, like, it's a Toymaker episode.
Yeah.
So it would make sense if the Toymaker got revenge on Steven. But I feel like maybe just, like, have him in, like, the Toymaker's realm when they're in Soho. And just have him there.
You know,
that would make more sense.
That would make way more sense than a cow. But, all right. Sure, I guess.
Yeah, it was going to be like a talking cow that was at the unit base for some reason.
Oh, so not even like a talking cow in the Toymaker's realm?
No.
Oh, that's just weird.
You can tell it was only a first draft idea, because it doesn't make any sense.
Russell T. Davies, I'm glad you don't just run with your first draft ideas.
But then, yeah, Peter Purves has returned to the role of Steven in Big Finish. He's done a bunch. And then there was Tales of the TARDIS for the Time Meddler as well.
Yeah, the Tales of the TARDIS, where he talks about how when he left the Doctor, he was a king.
Yeah.
Which I feel like says a lot, too, if he considered that leadership role being a king. I don't know if that's necessarily that good, but...
Apparently he eventually introduced democracy to them in some of the side content.
Well, that's good. That's probably best.
The Doctor's consciousness that was like in a jar wanted to run for president, apparently, in one of them, which is very weird.
I want to know how many times that consciousness in a jar butted heads with Steven.
Apparently Steven was like, you can't be the actual Doctor, because the Doctor would never want to be a leader like that.
Mm-hmm.
You wanting to run for president means you're not the real Doctor.
Okay. Nowadays, that's a bit off, Mr. President of the World, but not that he wants President of the World, but
yeah, like he'll take leadership, but he doesn't want it.
Yeah.
It's the thing. But I guess this is goodbye to Steven, and I have to say, I definitely, like, I think Steven might be like one of my top 5 companions now, just because like he's basically like the highlight of every episode that he's in, which is partially because they're not good episodes. But if you're consistently the highlight of every episode, then that means you have to be a good character too.
Yeah. No, I agree. Steven's definitely been like a really good companion, and of the classics that we've seen thus far, he's definitely my favorite character of all this that we've seen so far. I think his development was really good, and I really liked seeing how different from Ian he was, but how much he still like came to his own. The role is his, and he was not Ian's replacement, and they made that very clear. Very much his own character, and I think his personality was really great too. He felt like a modern companion, honestly, in terms of like the things he did and the way he held himself, even the way he calls out the Doctor at times, very much feels like modern companion kind of ideas.
And I think it kind of helps his character that like he's not written to be like any one specific archetype, because like
Yeah.
Susan and Vicky were just like the young innocent character, and then Ian was just your science teacher, and then also an action hero thing,
Yeah.
and then Barbara was a history teacher, and then Steven's just kind of like none of those. He's just kind of a character,
He was an astronaut, wasn't he?
Yeah, but that never really
Never really came
is
up.
like a plot point.
Yeah, it should have.
They just write him as like a person, and it's just like he's not there to fill any specific role.
Yeah,
in the story.
That's true. That's true. I do appreciate that the Doctor taught him how to use part of the TARDIS, though.
Yeah,
because he's someone from the future, so he probably understands at least a little bit of it.
Yeah, like he's an astronaut, so he should be able to figure it out.
Yeah, it was just a small detail that they never really like super went into, but I appreciated whenever they had it. Like he taught Steven a bit of the TARDIS, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think that brings us to the War Machines, which is after Steven's end, now we have the end of Dodo and the introduction of new companions. And I gotta say, I really liked this story because it felt like I have written down here, this feels like a classic Who story they could have done with the Third Doctor, Fourth Doctor, and like a unit story. Like this really felt like a template for a lot of those going forward, and I thought that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it definitely is, especially because this is our first modern day story, not counting Planet of Giants, because that's obviously a different idea.
Yeah,
they're shrunken down in that, so it's not really simple.
Mm-hmm.
And then this definitely becomes a template for Unit, because Unit comes into this in the Second Doctor's era. So.
Right. No, but I thought it was really well done on that front. Like, I really liked the different cast of characters here and the threat. Like, the Doctor mentioning the Daleks at first, I thought it might be a Dalek story, and I'm actually glad it wasn't, and that was thrown for a loop. So Dodo's the only current companion that has never encountered the Daleks. Only first Doctor companion so far that hasn't. I really liked the process of this artificial intelligence, because being less wordy, Wotan is just an AI. They had this AI taking over, building robots to take over, and slowly subjugating people through hypnosis. I thought like all of that was really cool. The introduction of Polly and Ben, they have well-established characters and with good personalities at that. I feel like I know far more about them in this first story than I did about Dodo and even Steven at first.
Yeah.
So I definitely really liked what they did with them. I liked the Doctor constantly working with and kind of butting heads with Sir Charles of the Royal Scientific Club. That kind of felt like a precursor to things like Unit with the Brigadier and things like that. And I'll save our discussion on Dodo's departure and the ending for a little bit later when we get there. But my overall thoughts, this was a really good story and like a really good end to the season too.
Yeah. I found it funny that this is basically just the Terminator, but it's 18 years before the Terminator was a thing.
Yeah. It's basically the Terminator or like a precursor to the Cybermen. It also kind of felt like. Yeah.
I will say this. This is the first time where they have a scientific advisor for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Who is the name? Kit Pedler is his name. And he is involved with Doctor Who for a while after this.
Okay.
And he is one of the two people credited as the creator of Cybermen. So.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So maybe that was the intent. This being like a precursor.
Yeah. Because this is actually the first story with Innes Lloyd and Jerry Davis. Like the previous stories were all scripts that were already commissioned before they took over. So this was like their first actual script that they started with. And then they brought Kit Pedler on, and the interviewing process was like, the post office tower has recently been built. What kind of story would you tell involving that?
Yeah.
And then this was his idea, and they loved it, so they hired him.
It was a really cool idea too, honestly.
Yeah.
I think the way Wotan hypnotizes and subjugates, I think they could have gone into that a little bit more. I did think it was really cool, and it made a bit more sense whenever it was done through like the telephone, like for Dodo.
Yeah.
Because I think like that's okay. It's submitting like a certain signal kind of thing. I thought before the doctors went like, oh, it's hypnosis. I thought it was gonna have something to do with like the electromagnetic like activity in the brain or something being similar to that of a computer.
Yeah.
But no, it was just, it was just hypnosis. The doctor just has to snap his fingers a certain way. And Dodo sleeping for 48 hours should be a lot more concerning than he made it sound. That's a long time to sleep. That's 2 whole days you're losing.
Apparently, they wanted to make kids scared of picking up the phone, and that was the thought process there.
Man.
I think William Hartnell does a fantastic job in this as well.
Yeah.
Like, especially there was that one scene at the end of, I think it was like end of episode 2, where he's, everyone's backing away as the robot comes up, and then he stands in front of it. It's like, it's a very iconic moment, I feel, right there. And it's nice to see. It's nice to see him still getting like strong episodes and stuff towards the end of his tenure.
It's true. The concern really was there that he was going to be like really losing it and just not doing very well. But like he really was the star of this one, and it showed. Sure, he mispronounced Daleks the very first time, but that's okay. Like he fumbled over his words, but his role throughout this entire story was really strong. And constantly present, unlike the majority of the other ones throughout the rest of the season that we had.
Yeah. Also, just a note that from the Savages was the reason why they had Jano take over like the Doctor's mannerisms was because for episode 3, they didn't give him like an actual vacation, but they just had the whole episode. William Hartnell didn't have to memorize any lines for that, and that was his vacation.
Huh.
So they wanted Jano to be the Doctor and that's why they did that, which is just very funny to think of.
That's pretty bizarre. Well, I'm glad he came back from his vacation and did this story very, very well.
Yeah.
I did.
Also, the out of order sign that he puts on the TARDIS is the same one that the 12th Doctor uses.
I love that.
Funny.
I love that.
He just always kept the out of order sign, even though he doesn't use it when he lands in modern day anymore. He just locks it.
Yeah. Because, I mean, thankfully,
I guess
just
police boxes aren't really used anymore, so I guess he doesn't really need to lock it. And then there was another, right at the beginning, it was funny because he's supposed to say, like, I can sense evil, but he says, I can scent it, like he can smell it. And then I loved how Jackie Lane just played off of that and was like, she sniffs the air and is like, I can't smell anything. Like she just plays off of his
that felt ad-libbed pretty well, yeah. But it was honestly like a good little moment. Like it adds a bit of personality. It adds a bit of like what their banter is kind of like, and it's a silly little thing.
Yeah, I will say that I feel like maybe the weak point is just like what the robots look like because they basically just feel like Daleks to me. Bootleg Daleks.
They are just bootleg Daleks. It's kind of funny, especially like with the way their weapons work.
Yeah,
it's still shooting like the mist out of the whisks, and I mean, that's kind of why I still thought it might have been like a Dalek story, like maybe like the computer AI was like hijacked by the Daleks or something. But
yeah,
like eventually it ended up being like no Daleks whatsoever. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I wasn't sitting there wanting it to be a Dalek story, but it was interesting that it felt like there was all the little signs of it potentially being one.
Yeah.
I think
also there was the fight scene in the big fight scene with the robot in the army.
Yeah.
Just wasn't very good. Although I will say apparently some scenes are missing from these, and apparently there's like a minute of footage from that fight that's missing.
Oh.
So maybe it looked better originally, but now it doesn't.
I don't know. It kind of went on a bit long already. I don't really know if another minute on top of that would have.
Well, I think they just like replaced the footage with like other footage. So I think it would have been the same length, but it would have looked better. I think is basically the idea.
Okay.
Because what they basically with this story, like the the version that they got back just had like some scenes cut from it for, like, I guess where it was, they just had to remove some scenes and stuff. And then what they did was they took the audio recording and they just tried to like match it up with stuff. So they just like put different footage in there.
Huh.
So
I see.
Probably would have looked better had we had that stuff there, but yeah, they tried their best and it didn't really work out very well.
Yeah, that's fair, I suppose, if it didn't end up working out so well. They had a lot of scenes, though, of, like, fighting the robot, either fighting the robot or fighting the hypnotized people. Whether it was the homeless man, or Ben, or, like, there was kind of a lot of those, so it all started to feel a bit samey, to be honest.
Yeah. I definitely liked, like, everything William Hartnell was doing, though,
Yes.
with, like, the robot.
Yes.
And then you get to see him go stand up to it, and then it's like, no, watch your temper.
I love
as it tries
that.
to hit him.
I have that note. I love that the trapped robot just gets told, temper, by the doctor, and it lowers its arm.
Yep.
Like, that was actually really funny.
Yeah.
But that does bring us to the unfortunate weak part of this episode, which is the very end. And it's less so a problem with this episode and more so a problem with behind the scenes of
Yeah.
the doctor standing by the TARDIS waiting for Dodo, and Ben and Polly come running up. They're like, oh, by the way, I have a message from Dodo. She sends you her love and she's deciding she's going to stay here. I'm sorry. That's how Dodo leaves? Like, I know we've talked about that before, about how she has the worst companion departure in the entire series. But, like, the fact that the last scene we have of Dodo is she's being she's getting over the hypnosis and is sent away, that very much just says halfway through this story she got fired. Like, they didn't want her anymore.
Yeah.
And that's awful.
Her contract only lasted to 2 episodes into this, so they just didn't renew it for the 2 more episodes. And that's what happened there.
That's terrible.
Apparently, originally they didn't actually plan to remove Dodo here yet, because originally it was just going to be the character that would eventually become Ben became the new companion, and Dodo would have still been around.
Okay.
And then in that, basically what would have happened was she ran away from when he was trying to break her hypnosis, and then she went on to do like all the stuff Polly did once she was brainwashed.
Oh,
so then they just split it up into 2 different characters in the end.
So Polly wasn't meant to be brainwashed originally. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That would have been interesting.
But yeah, the Dodo's ending is definitely terrible.
Yeah. It's the weakest part of this, unfortunately.
Yeah. Everything else is very, very good, though.
Yeah.
So,
like, everything else.
I still quite enjoyed it.
And it says a lot, actually, that despite that terrible ending, that it's still a really good serial. I would actually say The War Machines might be one of the best serials of this entire season. One of.
Yeah.
It definitely is knocked down a little bit because of the way Dodo was handled, because I definitely think that could have been better. But I do think it did a great job introducing the new companions. Is like the other side of that. So
I also just have a few more trivia details here. In the novelization, the reason why Brett trusted the Doctor immediately and let him in is because he's friends with Ian Chesterton. And Ian Chesterton told him stories about the Doctor. So he's like, oh, you're the Doctor that I've been heard so much about. Because it doesn't really make sense that he's just let into the room with Wotan at the beginning. And it's just like,
he's
just here.
That's true.
So in the novelization, they explained it, that Ian Chesterton is, a person that's in science and stuff, so he would have friends that are also in science.
Yeah. And here's the name, the Doctor. Honestly, I kind of just chalked it up to maybe the Doctor has psychic paper, and he just hasn't used it on screen yet.
Yeah. And then this is also the first time we have like a real newscaster in the show by the name of Kenneth Kendall. Mm-hmm. Also, he is gay, by the way, which is
nice.
the first time we have like a real person playing themselves is a gay man.
Hey, nice. There we go.
And then Big Finish did a sequel to this story with
Oh.
Torchwood characters,
Ooh.
where they brought back Wotan, and it's like a Torchwood story.
That actually works really well. Wotan definitely works as a Torchwood or unit threat.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'll have to look into that at some point.
And then they've also been doing
So-
Dodo stuff recently, which is also interesting.
You cut out a bit for that. Can you just repeat the thing about Dodo?
Big Finish has been doing Dodo stories now as well.
Oh, nice.
They're set between the Savages and the War Machines so that it can be just the Doctor and Dodo.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Trying to give a little bit more for her, even though her ending wasn't the best. It does give a little bit more for her before leaving.
It is a bit funny, though, because the offhanded comment about Daleks means they can't introduce her to Daleks at any point.
Yeah, that's true.
Because she says she doesn't know them in this story.
Mm-hmm. Unless they do a story and she loses her memory at the end of it. Because
There's also been a lot of like books and stuff that have done weird things with Dodo. I will say. There was in the 1990s, Doctor Who books kind of went into dark places, and I will say there are some dark stories about Dodo, about what happens to her after this.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
That's not good.
One of the things I noticed was that they said when the Doctor like breaks the hypnosis and tells her like forget about all of this stuff, she actually forgets about everything that she did on the TARDIS.
Aw, so she
in
just,
that story.
So she just Donna Nobles it.
Yeah.
Aw. So basically, then the message left for the Doctor doesn't make sense in that context, though. But
yeah. But yeah, that book has a pretty bad stuff to happen to her in it that we probably shouldn't say because it's really dark.
Jeez.
But then that book is not considered canon because she's mentioned as having been to Sarah Jane's funeral.
Oh, nice.
She would have been dead according to that book already.
Ah, jeez.
So
whoever wrote that book was really upset by how Dodo left, but rather than wanting better for her, just decided they hated her.
and that book is really weird too because it's about the assassination of JFK, and it's like a time traveler was involved with it, and then for some reason Dodo's in it, and it's like Doctor Who books got really weird in the 90s.
That sounds like it. That's a mess, frankly. That's just a mess.
Yeah.
Okay. Well then, poor Dodo, just this orphan girl who has strangely too much happen to her, despite also not having anywhere near enough on screen happen to her.
Yeah. Overall, I don't know what to think about Dodo because like she's not really a well-established character.
No.
At any point. They just like don't do anything with her. So it's like I wish she had a chance to do more, but they just didn't do anything with her and they just removed her.
She like I say at the end of the Savages, she's so nothing. She's incredibly generic, and unfortunately, like there's barely any personality for her, barely any backstory given for her, and when put with the new companions, they give all of it to the new companions. They barely even close her out well. It's just really unfortunate. Like, Doctor Who, much later on, would go on to the idea of a companion leaves in the middle of the story. In the case of at the very start of The Power of the Doctor, Dad decides, you know what, this isn't for me anymore, and he leaves. And Doctor Who has proven, later on at least, they can do a companion departure in the middle of a story, and it can be done. So the fact that Dodo was handled this poorly, that they decided, oh, we're just going to send her out into the country and she'll recover, knowing they weren't going to bring her back to say goodbye, and it wasn't written as like a proper goodbye, is really disappointing. Because it means the entire time they had her character here, they never knew what to do with her, and somehow to an even worse degree than Susan, who the whole problem with Susan was they weren't really sure what to do with her.
Yeah. I feel like they could have just had Dodo say goodbye in episode 2 and it would have worked. Or they could have just said, like, she has to stay here for a while to recover. Like, she's still not in good health, so she can't really join you instead of just her saying goodbye.
Even
there
that,
definitely better ways to do it.
even that, like, oh, like she's still not fully recovered, she needs to rest, and the doctor just doing like, I must go visit her sometime. That alone would have worked.
Yeah.
Just a change in the lines. But it's too dismissive the way it is now.
It was largely just because, like, it was a very last-minute decision to replace her with Polly.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
I guess they just realized last minute that, like, her contract was only for, like, half a season. I guess we'll just get rid of her.
Yeah. I just wish, even if they were just getting rid of her, I just wish they handled the dialogue for it better in a way that made a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate to say I think Dodo's the worst companion we've ever had, because I feel like it's not her fault at all.
I mean, I feel Katarina is maybe a contender for that.
That's true. If we count Katarina, she definitely does even more so. The problem is, dare I say, Katarina had more, I want to say, like, seeds of a character to do something with, but then they killed her off. Whereas they didn't kill Dodo off. They laid like 3 seeds of like something of a backstory for her character, never expanded upon it, erased her personality, and her goodbye was off screen.
Yeah. I guess it's also a good point that Katarina's only there for 5 episodes, and then Dodo's there for like 20, and we still don't know anything about her as a character.
Like, at least, like, Katarina comes across more like a character that was set up to, could she be a companion? No, she's killed off before she really becomes a companion. Whereas Dodo she was a companion for this amount of time, and we know less about her than the one that got killed off. It's sad, frankly.
Yeah.
That's not to say, Katarina's actually a really good companion. That's not to say that. It's just a case of neither one was handled very well, and I'm shocked that, despite how long they had, they didn't do more with Dodo, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
How did the actress, like looking back on the role of Dodo, how did she feel about it, if you've looked into that at all?
She retired from acting, so that might be a sign that maybe she didn't enjoy it. Because
after this role retired?
Yeah, I think almost immediately after this, she retired from acting. She opened up a voiceover studio, and she worked with people such as Tom Baker at her voice actor voiceover studio. But yeah, she retired from acting, and I think she has mostly stayed away from Doctor Who related stuff over the years.
I think that's quite telling.
She did pass away in 2021, which is unfortunate. But luckily, I mean, as I said, Big Finish has decided to try to pick up the torch and do more stuff with Dodo. So maybe she gets more interested in that. I've heard some people say that it's kind of a redemption for the character in the Big Finish stuff. So
that's good to hear, at least. Even though I still feel like it's a shame about the actress, and it feels kind of clear she didn't like it in the end. She didn't like how she was handled, or was upset by it, especially if she stayed away from anything Doctor Who in the last 20 years before she passed away. That's really unfortunate.
Yeah. I don't think she's ever done conventions and stuff, and most of the classic Who actors have done those and stuff. So I think it's a sign that she probably didn't enjoy her time here.
Yeah. She probably could tell they just weren't doing enough with her, and she's like, hey, give me more to do. And they're just like, well...
I think it's just kind of the issue is that she came in as the last production team was leaving, and then she was just kind of there only for the scripts that the old production team had already put into production. So it's kind of just an issue that she came in at the wrong time.
Yeah. Well,
and then the new production team just kind of didn't want to keep the character because there was nothing to the character yet.
Nothing yet. There's just nothing at all.
Yeah.
Before we move on to talking about the new companions, though, I do want to ask you, what would you say was your favorite general story or specifically moment from both Steven and Dodo? Because for me, I actually think Dodo shined in The Gunfighters. She had the most personality there. So,
all of her scenes with her and Doc Holliday, I feel that's where she shined the most, I would say.
Yeah, agreed.
Steven's a bit more complicated because, like, I liked multiple things with him.
Yeah,
Like, I think the Time Meddler was it was a very good introduction to him.
it was.
And then I think the Massacre was also just, like, a very good Steven-centric story.
Mm-hmm. We really got to see how he, like, handled on his own in that one.
Yeah.
And I think the Massacre also was really, really good because he had that moment of, like, how dare you to the Doctor. And I think that was such a defining moment for him.
I kind of wish he had just left then. Though,
I
honest.
do think it would have been better character development if he did leave then. Just because his hesitation to leave later on, despite this, felt more like they were undoing that.
And it's kind of like contradicted by the time we get to the War Machines, where like the reason why he stuck around was because he was like, "Oh, there are police officers coming, Doctor, you need to get out of here."
Yep.
But now we know that Doctor just has an out of order sign he could have just put on there.
Yep.
So it's like he didn't have to stay.
Yeah. It didn't really make sense, unfortunately. I also think I would have liked a little bit of a better goodbye from him, of like specifically talking to the Doctor, like just some sort of like I don't always agree with your ways, I don't always see eye to eye with you, but thank you for the travels kind of thing.
Yeah, that scene definitely just felt like a rushed exit.
Yes,
which is weird because like I think the seeds were planted for him to be like the person that I don't want to really call them savages, but there's nothing else to call them.
Right.
But you know, he's the person that the savages trusted to be like their leader and stuff. So like the seeds were planted throughout it.
Yep.
And then it just felt so rushed to just have him leave.
Yeah. Just some sort of like exchange between him and the Doctor and everything they've done would have been nice, but
yeah.
I think Steven was a really good companion though as a whole, and I wish Dodo was better. Is how I feel about the two of them.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Ben and Polly have made really good first impressions, though. I'm actually really excited to see how they fare in the TARDIS.
Yeah. And apparently they stick around for about a season as well.
Okay.
So
that's pretty good.
The idea of season-long companions does stick around. It's just that Jamie is the exception.
Fair.
It's basically what happens here.
Well, we'll get to see. But Ben and Polly stepping into the TARDIS is what closes out season 3. And
I do find it funny how it's just they accidentally joined the TARDIS.
Yeah,
and they do that again.
I kind of find that funny. Although I find it funny that it's that they had a key to the TARDIS and they wanted to give it back to him before they're whisked away.
Yeah. Like, I'm interested to see what they do with them. I feel like they're kind of going to imply a romance between the two of them because it's like kind of
they've already
to build up already.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of feel like maybe at the end they'll just be like, well, they decided to leave and get married or something.
Something like that, I suspect. And I suspect it'll be a little more obvious and direct about it than Ian and Barbara, where it felt more like that developed between them because of their shared experience together.
Yeah.
Whereas between Ben and Polly, I mean, they met and they've been flirting with each other already. They kind of started with that friendship already, and I think it's going to develop in that way. And thankfully, they didn't take that route with like Steven and Vicky and Dodo or anything like that. But
yeah, I mean, now we have they're the same age-ish, so it's definitely more appropriate here.
Yes. Yeah,
I did find it funny though. I found it so funny. The scene where Polly's brainwashed and Ben just like absolutely cannot understand that she's been brainwashed.
He is really slow on the uptake there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was quite
I would
funny.
also like to note that the actress that plays Polly, I think Anique Wills is her name. She is the wife at this time of Michael Goff, who played the Toymaker. Oh. And he basically encouraged her to take the role after he very much enjoyed doing the Celestial Toymaker.
Nice.
So yeah, nice how that works out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually.
And yeah, he loved his time on the show, so he was like, "Oh, you have an audition for Doctor Who. You should definitely take it." Because it's so fun to do that show. I do find it funny how much he enjoyed it though, because like he didn't have much to do when he was there.
Yeah,
he was just talking to himself the whole time. He was just talking to himself, so it's kind of funny how much he enjoyed it, but. I mean, I guess people just love working on the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that they enjoyed it that much, and I'm very curious to see how that'll reflect in Polly's character. Just, I guess, the determination and excitement towards it, too.
Yeah.
So, now that we're done with season 3, are we both in agreement that this was still the weakest season that we've seen thus far, despite it did, in the end, have some good highlights? But my gosh, this was rough to get through. I gotta be real.
I think the issue is that, like, John Wiles came in and he fired Maureen O'Brien, and just there was no plan to replace her.
No.
And it's just so obvious as you're watching all these stories that they just had no idea what they were doing.
This man messed it all up, and it took until the end of the season for them to finally start getting their footing for going forward.
And it coincidentally is just after he leaves. So, you know.
Coincidentally, in quotes.
Yeah, I think it's a shame because, like, I think out of what we watched so far, I feel like season 1 is the best one. Because, like, season 1, I don't think had a bad story in it. Like, I enjoyed every single story there.
Right.
Season 2 was a bit more hit or miss, and then season 3 is just mostly misses.
Yeah, I do agree about season 3 being mostly misses. I'm not sure between 1 or 2 anymore which one I prefer more, but what I do feel is that the season 1 was far more balanced. Season 2 has some good highs, some notable lows. Season 3 has definitely been some notable lows, but the highs were, like, surprisingly good. It does make me wonder if that's because of how many lows there are, but
yeah,
I feel like some of these, like, just like the Gunfighters, I feel like is actually just, like, good in its own right, not because so many others are bad. The War Machines is good in its own right. It's a precursor to what we see as a format for Doctor Who later on. And that's good in its own right, not because several others were bad.
Yeah, I think the War Machines works really well because it just kind of shows that we now have a production team that, like, actually has a very strong idea for the show and where they want to take the show. And it's a very good indicator of where we're going to be going in the near future.
Right.
Especially because we are going to be in modern times quite a bit in the near future.
Yeah.
You know, the Third Doctor is here for 3 seasons.
And there's a lot to do in there.
Yep. But yeah, I think... I definitely didn't like season 3 very much.
Mm-hmm.
I do also find it funny how, like, I've looked up, like, rankings that people tend to do of First Doctor stories, and they're basically the opposite of what we have felt for this season, because
really,
the Daleks' Master Plan is, like, one of the highest ones, apparently, and then the Gunfighters is one of the lowest ones, and I definitely feel like it's backwards.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, Daleks' Master Plan had good ideas in it, I just don't think they executed it very well, because, you know, you have 12 episodes, and half of the ideas feel half-baked, because you just don't... You spend too much time doing too many ideas instead of focusing on the one idea.
Exactly. And I mean, we know the Celestial Toymaker is treated like one of the best ones as well.
Yeah, and it wasn't. Well, I mean, I will say people have been critical of it, of the Celestial Toymaker. It's just that, like, I think it's like people like the idea of the Celestial Toymaker.
Yeah,
I don't think I don't think that many people really think it's, like, one of the best stories of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I will note, though, that I kind of forgot to say it when we did the Daleks' Master Plan episode, but I found it funny how when we watched Mission to the Unknown, you mentioned, like, it would be really weird if the Varga planes didn't come back in Daleks' Master Plan, and then, well, they kind of didn't.
Yeah, that's true. They
had, like, 2 lines about it.
Yeah.
They had, like, 2 lines saying, like, watch out for the Varga planes, and then it wasn't a plot point.
No. Man, that's a mess. Yeah,
I think it's just
that sounds like season 3 very well. A mess.
Yeah, it's just unfortunately very obvious that, you know, they fired one of the leads, and they looked at their scripts that were coming up, and they're like, well, we have no opportunities in here to introduce a new companion that we want to keep. Mm-hmm. So they just struggled to find a way until they just decided, okay, we're just going to have an epilogue in one of the episodes where we just go to the modern day for 5 minutes. And that's when we're going to get a new companion. But then by that point, John Wiles had already quit. So
it was too late.
Yeah.
Well, those are our thoughts on season 3. But if you guys support us on Patreon for $1 a month, you can get into our Discord, and we'll be encouraging discussions on these episodes. Maybe you want to come in and tell us in the Discord how much you actually really love season 3. But for $5 a month, you'll be able to watch us live as we record, and we have a little side chat here. And maybe you'd be popping in a message right now in the side chat that says, "No, you guys are absolutely wrong. Season 3 is the best we've had yet," and you send us like a paragraph to read through. And honestly, that'd be fascinating. I'd be down for that. But
Yep.
if you support us on Patreon, you are able to get in on the conversation with us and give us your thoughts on these episodes and this season as well. And that goes for going forward. So, Joy, I'm going to toss it to you to tell us about our next episode prep.
So our next episode will be about the Smugglers and the 10th Planet, which are the first 2 stories of season 4.
Okay.
I would like to make a couple notes here that the Smugglers is sort of a prequel to an 11th Doctor story.
Oh.
I mentioned this to you, Triss, off
That's right.
off stream, but I didn't say it in the episode, where the Curse of the Black Spot is about Captain Henry Avery finding a spaceship and flying off. Captain Henry Avery is a real pirate captain who just kind of disappeared one day. And the Smuggler is about people that he used to work with, like trying to find his treasure or something, I think like that. I don't know all the details, but I know that Captain Henry Avery is a character in it. Well, he's not in it, but it's his absence is like the driving force of the story, I believe.
Huh, okay.
And then the 10th Planet is, you might have heard that name before because it's our regeneration story.
Yep.
It's also the introduction of the Cybermen as well.
That's going to be... I'm actually very excited to see that one.
Yeah, so the Smugglers, unfortunately, is completely missing. So there's 4 episodes that you'll have to look for the loose cannon reconstruction of it. The 10th Planet, the first 3 episodes are surviving, and then the 4th episode has an animated version. So unfortunately, it's not on Tubi TV or BritBox, but it is on BBC iPlayer. And then otherwise, you'll just have to find a way to watch it.
Yeah. All right.
I will say we are more or less at the end of having to watch loose cannon reconstructions every single time. Because after this, there is the Highlanders, which will be in the following episode, and then we don't have a missing episode that doesn't have an animation until the end of the following season.
Okay, so we go a while.
Yeah, there's one at the very end of season 5, and then the second to last story of season 6. Otherwise, we'll have either animated versions or surviving versions.
Okay,
so
interesting.
Yeah, we're almost out of having to watch still images.
We're almost through.
Yep.
I will say, I do think the amount of those did kind of impact season 3. I do think some of these episodes would have been better if we had the actual surviving episodes, but I don't think it would have been that much better.
Yeah. I definitely find it a bit more difficult to get heavily invested in a missing episode, I gotta be honest.
Yeah, same.
Like, I appreciate everything that Loose Cannon Reconstructions has done, but it's definitely not ideal, obviously.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely like a bit hard to follow and keep invested in it.
I think maybe if we get animated versions of these stories, I will probably check them out, and then
we probably
I don't know, maybe it will change some opinions, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Maybe. And maybe we will get some of them one day, because it definitely feels like they're trying to go through and animate more of them.
I mean, yeah, they're almost done with Patrick Troughton's era, so they have to go into William Hartnell at some point.
Yep, and we've already started a bit with the Toy Maker, so...
Yeah.
But I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Finishing up Season 3, saying goodbye to Steven, saying goodbye to Dodo. So, as a reminder, make sure to watch The Smugglers and the 10th Planet before our next episode. We are going to be saying goodbye to the First Doctor next episode, and that's going to be pretty interesting. You can find you can find those episodes through Loose Cannon Reconstructions for The Smugglers and BBC iPlayer for the 10th Planet, or potentially other methods. And as a reminder, if you support us on Patreon for just $1 a month, you'll gain access to our Discord, as well as early access to these episodes. I have been Triss. You can find me on social media at ToonTriss.
And I've been Joy. You can find me at Joy Content.
And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.